This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
Being a marketer's no sweat. You just have to manage dozens of channels, launch hundreds of campaigns, score thousands of leads, and okay, fine, it's a lot of sweat. Unless you have HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools to help you do all that and more. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
Hey there, Duke fans, and welcome to episode number 675 of the Duke Basketball Roundup. We are coming to you later in the afternoon on Saturday, December 21st. First off, happy birthday, happy 18th birthday to Cooper Flagg and his brother Ace. It is his 18th birthday, but as we're going to talk about, this man has been playing like an adult for a lot longer than his 18 years. But I am Donald Wine. I'm your host for this episode. We are going to be talking about the 82-56 win over the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. With me, who we pushed this back a little bit because he was in the building, Jason Evans is here. Jason, a lot of people have said that there is a little bit of a curse going around with you and I going to games. They can stop that now because in a big way, whatever curse there was, I don't think there was, but other people, the streets were talking. But now the streets got to talk about how we're Lucky Charms.
There you go, baby. Exactly. Yeah, there was no curse in the house with Jason Evans on press row for the game against Georgia Tech, unlike a year ago. But we shall not speak of that any further. I had a great time. The place was, Don, if I can give you a little flavor of what it was like in the arena. The place was full of Duke fans. It always is, but this was even more. Like, usually I feel like it's maybe a third Duke fans. This was 50-50, might have been even more than 50-50. Like, there were a ton of Duke fans. In fact, I noticed Cooper Flagg had a dunk midway through the first half, a pretty, thunder dunk kind of situation. And a couple minutes before that, by Dongo of Georgia Tech had a dunk. So I could compare sort of the crowd oohs and ahs and cheers from each one of them. The crowd was louder on Cooper's dunk than it was on Bai's dunk. So that sort of tells you the Duke fans were out in full force. It was funny. I was looking around at one point and I was like, God, there just weren't that many students. I was like, where are the Georgia Tech students? And then I went, wait a second. They're on break. It's Christmas break time. So that may have contributed to there not being as much of a crowd in the house. Can I ask you really quick, how did it come across on television? Could you tell that the Duke fans were loud?
Yeah, so loud is a different thing because, as you know, they kind of play with the levels there when someone's on the road. But it did seem like there was a ton of Duke fans there. Every shot that they showed of the crowd, there was a lot of blue involved. But also, Jason, what I could hear, who was mic'd up, was the Duke bench. Because anytime there was something good that happened with Duke, and as we're going to talk about, there was a lot, the Duke bench was hooting and hollering. You could hear them. I guess they had a boom mic right by them, but you could hear them hooting and hollering for most of the game, which was great. The Duke bench is always in the game. They're always trying to animate and get behind their teammates. But even when stuff was like, if there was like a jump ball or something like that, like Khaman Malwatch hit the ground for a jump ball, and all of a sudden everyone's just like on the bench. You could hear the crowd behind him, kind of just like hooting and hollering. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is like Cameron South for at least for a couple hours, which I'm sure was great for the team. I know they appreciated it on social media. They were showing a lot of the support in the crowd, but it's great to have that kind of support on the road for true road games.
Yeah, and by the way, speaking of the bench, at Georgia Tech, it's sort of limited. There's not as much space on the bench
Yeah, I
as there
noticed
is at
this.
some other places, and I noticed that Spencer Hubbard and Stanley Borden were not sitting with the rest of the team. They were on the second row. They're kind of behind the other players and the coaches that were on the front row. If they had to go in the game, they would have had to like hurdle over some guys to get into the game. It also is worth noting that Spencer Hubbard he wasn't in uniform for he was just in a warm up. He has
sick.
No, he has a hurt tooth apparently.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah. Cameron
Yeah.
Sheffield came in. He actually did play. Cameron Sheffield was, I guess, ill against George Mason. But I remember the Duke basketball Twitter when they announced the injury report for George Mason. They just said Spencer Hubbard tooth emoji and did not like specify what that
Yeah.
was. And everyone was kind of like, okay, so his tooth hurts. Like that's what's keeping him
Yeah,
out.
exactly.
Come on,
Uh,
Spence. We need you in the game, man. I need these points for the stats game.
Yeah, exactly, man. I have one other note though about being on press row, being in the press section for this game. I've said this before. If you're a fan, and we are fans, Donald, let's be clear.
Mhm.
You and I are fans. If you're a fan, it's really hard when you're on press row not to clap or pump your fist in the air when they make a good play. It's like it's so instinctive of me to do that. Tyrese had that like 3-point play layup about 5 minutes into the game where he got fouled as he was going up for it. And I started to do a fist pump and then I sort of eased. I went, oh, wait, no. And I eased it into like just touching my hair, scratching my head. I was like, okay, I covered it up nicely. That said, a couple minutes later, when he did that over the head layup where he was like back to the basket, that was like one of the most outrageous things. I did do a, oh my, while
Yeah,
I was on
so
press row. Yeah.
so
And
when go ahead.
I was gonna say the nice thing was I was basically sitting with Connor O'Neill of Devils Illustrated and Steve Wiseman of the Durham Herald Sun. So no one really cared. And I will freely admit that I actually yelped, almost jumped out of my chair when Caleb Foster hit his 3-pointer. That's how big a moment I thought that was. So I violated the press row protocol a couple times in this game.
So as you know, I'm a man of many hats, and as of right now, you guys can't see it on the podcast that you're listening to, but I'm not wearing a hat right now. But I will say that it's very easy for me to compartmentalize. Hey, I'm in a position where I need to be silent or I need to react in a different way. There's definitely times it's great when you're with, like as you mentioned, fellow Duke beat writers because they understand, right? They're kind of doing the same thing, and like you said, you kind of have buzzwords. Ooh, oh, that's interesting. Oh my, you have to like kind of say something to indicate to others, wow, that was a really good play without being fan-like.
Yeah.
And it's funny, Jason, as you know, I'm in soccer. When you go abroad, we don't have to worry about any of this. You can cheer the press box as much as you want. They will be actively cheering. And then after the game, they just put on their stoic face and cover the game like they're supposed to. So it's probably the American in us that wants to hoot and holler, but we just got to take this game on the road, babies. Maybe Duke needs another foreign trip, so we can do that in the press box. Let's talk about the actual game that transpired on the court. As I mentioned, 82-56, the victory over the Yellow Jackets. Duke moves to 10-2 on the season, 2-0 in the ACC. A couple superlatives, Jason, about this game. I think you saw this somewhere. Saturday's contest marked Jon Scheyer's 400th game as a coach for Duke. That's both assistant, of course, and then as a head coach. Duke has a record of 309 and 91 in that time frame. That is a lot of wins. But also, Jason, speaking of a lot of wins, against current ACC members, okay, 17 other teams. This was Duke 1,000th win against those teams. Duke is 1,512 against the current ACC. That's not counting anyone who may have left during that time.
Maryland.
It just counts the teams that stuck around to be a part of this. So I thought that was pretty cool. Let's start, as we normally do, with the headlines. And Jason, I have a few that I thought were pretty cool. We got a great deal right in the aftermath of this game because I guess a lot of people really wanted to celebrate this one. We got a first timer. We're going to lead with that one from Kelly Clark. It's her first time writing in, and she goes, "It's the most conderful time of the year," which I thought was great. We're right around the holiday season, and Kon definitely had the holiday spirit in the form of his threes. Paula Anderson, who writes in quite a bit, she wrote "Kontastic," again, play on Kon Knippel. John Grantlin, who of course writes in all the time, he had a few, and the one that I liked was Duke's D rambles and Rex Tech engineering a great ACC win. Do not ask me to read that again. That tongue twister in the middle there, John. Salute to you, sir.
That's a damn good one, my friend. I like that. Engineers a win. I like that.
Yeah. Duke Fox wrote in, and he again writes in quite a bit. And Duke Fox had buzzers beaten and Blue Devil birthday bash. I had to think about that one as well. But also, again, shout out to Cooper Flagg on his 18th birthday, once again putting on a show down in Atlanta. And then William Carberg wrote in, and William Carberg, who also writes in quite a bit. Deep Devils ramble into McCamish Pavilion and Rex Tech's Saturday afternoon. We had a lot of alliteration, a lot of tongue twisters here, but a lot of great ones, Jason.
Yeah, and I will say that the folks who made puns on Kon Knippel's name are the folks who to me get the gold star, because as we move into the good, I'm gonna take it right from the top, baby. Kon was incredible in this game, especially in the second half, taking that ball into the lane, playing off that pick and roll that he ran with man. It was unstoppable. I don't have this, I haven't been able to go back and look at the videotape of this game or anything like that. My bet is that in the second half, when Man came to the top of the key to set a screen for Kon, now, not every one of those plays resulted in Duke getting a shot. There's sometimes it didn't. But my bet is Duke got a shot 80+% of the time when they ran that play, maybe 90+% of the time. And they scored virtually every time they got a shot. And sometimes it was Kon getting a layup. But mostly it was Man getting a dunk after dunk after dunk. And I tweeted at one point, I was like, is Georgia Tech going to stop this? Because if they're not going to stop it, let's just keep on running it. But it was incredible to watch. It totally took over the game. In the first 4 minutes of the second half, that pick and roll action helped Duke go on a 17-2 run that functionally ended the game. I mean, Tech scored right out of halftime to draw within 4 points. And then Duke went on a 17-2 run that was mostly Kon and Man doing the pick and roll. And it was fun to watch. It was undefendable if you are Georgia Tech. And a little later in this podcast, we're going to play some audio from when I spoke to Kon Knippel and John Scheyer in the postgame press conference. And I asked both of them about it. And I'm telling you, John said, yeah, that play works.
Yeah, it's so going back and even the pick and roll thing, because when you look at Kon Knippel's stats, the one thing that stood out to me actually was not the pick and roll, it was his threes. 4 for 8 from three. He's kind of, gotten some of that criticism off his back. He was instrumental in both the first and second half of Duke opening up some leads. And a lot of it was through his 3-point shot. Jason, on Twitter about maybe 4 or 5 days ago, my best friend sent me something. It was from a guy named @JMansTakes. And it was...
I sent it to you.
No. I got it. No. I sent it to you from him.
Oh, okay.
Because I got it from my best friend. Because what he did was he mentioned the fact that Kon's footwork was the reason why he was missing all these shots. Why all the shots were clanging off the back rim was just a very small detail of the way he set his feet and the way he shot his shot using his feet. I noticed in this game that all of his threes were that one step in, where he kind of leaned into the shot the way that he was doing earlier in the season. And because of that, he was 4 for 8 from three. And I thought it was great. They were all, very good looks. I thought he was able to use that effectively. And then once he established the fact that he could hit threes, I think the pick and roll opened up even more because guys had to basically worry about the fact that, hey, this guy was on to this afternoon and he could hit it from anywhere. So I really enjoyed the fact that it was an easy game for us to watch, but it was also fun because we got some of that slump off of his back. And he mentioned, I don't think you were able to hear this because he was on the broadcast with Jim Boeheim. He had a nice exchange where Boeheim was just like, yeah, just don't think, he said, I think about my shot too much. And I think I was overthinking it. And that's why I was starting to miss some. And Boeheim just basically said, don't overthink it, man. You're a shooter. Just shoot it. And I think that was very, very cool for a guy of his prestige to kind of say, "Hey, kid, just keep shooting the ball because you're really good at it." And I think that's what we saw today.
Yeah, and as we continue with some of the Kon statistical stuff, he was one damn rebound away from a 10-5-5 game. He was
I'm telling you, these
so
10-5-5s. People
hard.
emailed us early and they said, "Oh, these guys are gonna be getting like 30 10-5-5s."
No.
We should count how many near 10-5-5s we have because that's a lot.
Yeah, he had the 5 assists. He only had 4 rebounds. He had 0 rebounds, by the way, Kon did in the first half. Just grab one, maybe. Just one more. He would have been there. And by the way, part of his statistical domination in this game was he had 0 turnovers. I mean, considering how much he was handling the ball, really, really impressive. And if we're going to talk about handling the ball and the such, let's segue very briefly to the assists. This is something John Scheyer talked about. You'll hear later on. John Scheyer talked about the assists in the postgame. Duke had 10 assists on 15 made buckets in the first half. They had 10 assists on 16 made buckets in the second half. 20 assists on the game was the second most in a game all year. You may recall against Wofford, Duke went kind of hog wild, had 24 assists on 30 buckets against Wofford. So this was the second best assist total on the season. And it was a 64.5% assist rate for Duke. Anytime you're up there in the 60s, you're having a good game. And the thing that I liked was almost all the assists were like easy baskets. It wasn't, sometimes you get an assist where like you pass to a guy and it's, he's still really contested and he finishes nicely, or the guy's not, like sort of like, oh, really? That's an assist? Maybe. It felt like Duke's assists were really easily earned because the buckets just went through so simply in this game.
Yeah, and I think it leads to part of the thing that I thought was great was we had hot starts in both halves. We didn't just wait for the first half to do a hot start and then we kind of cooled off towards the end of the first half. But like, I think with 5 minutes left in the first half, we were shooting 60% from the floor and like 50% from three. Like we did really, really well. And I thought that helped, again, ease the pressure a bit, like especially on the road. If you think about it, Jason, this is a stat that I think is interesting. This was the first time that we had 3 true road games. I think I've mentioned this on the show.
Yeah.
First time since 1990-91 season that we've had 3 true road games before Christmas. We won all 3 of them, and we won all 3 of them by at least 11 points. So again,
that is so impressive.
It makes it so much easier when you start the game shooting the ball well. And then you go out in the second half and you also shoot the ball well. And I'm not even going to talk about the defense yet because we always lead with the defense. I want to talk about the fact that our offense was on point in both halves, and we were equally good on offense in both halves. We were making it easy for ourselves and making it easier for our defense, right? Because if our defense gets into a little rut where we give up a few baskets, there's no pressure because it felt like every single time, like, okay. Every single time it felt like Georgia Tech was making a little bit of a run, we would end it with a 3, or we would end it with a dunk, or we would end it with, someone getting an and one and going to the line. Every single time they had a chance to get any momentum, we crushed it because we were able to make our shots on offense. And while we love our defense and we love how it's come together so far this year, the offense makes everything so much easier, and it makes it where you and I as Duke fans and all of you out there can breathe a little bit easier on a Saturday afternoon while we watch our team play.
Yeah, look, early on, when you have Kon and Isaiah Evans hitting 3-pointers, when you have, we had Sion James, we had Cooper Flagg hit one fairly early, I think. When the team's hitting a bunch of early threes, it felt like a weight was lifted off their shoulders because they've seen themselves struggle so much this year. And then sort of toward the middle of the game, second half especially, Tech started playing zone defense against Duke. What a massive mistake that was.
We played some zone too, by the way, only for a couple possessions, but they noticed they were like, "Hey, both teams are playing zone at this point." We were winning that battle, very much
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, it felt like when Tech was playing zone that Duke got a good shot. We didn't hit every one of them, but we got a good shot on virtually every possession against that zone. You just cannot zone Duke. There are too many guys who can pass. There are too many guys who can find spots. In on the wing and the such. They're just going to get open shots left and right. Connor O'Neill, like I said, I was sitting next to Connor O'Neill, Devils Illustrated, when Tech was zoning and Duke was starting to succeed against it. He tweeted, "Zones are for cowards." And all this translated into one of the most absurd shooting games that Duke's going to have this year. Don, I'm not sure if you noticed this. Duke was 70% on their 2-point field goals. 70%? 21 out of 30? Come on. We had a decent, we were 10 of 25, 40% on our threes. We cooled off a little bit after getting hot early. So, and I want to relate this to something. Before the game, I went and I had lunch with Ryan Young, former player on the team, friend of the podcast.
Friend of the pod.
Yeah, great guy. Ryan texted me he was going to be in town. He's like, "Yeah, I'm coming to Atlanta," and I was like, "The varsity, baby. I'm taking you to the varsity." I had, by the way, some Atlanta friends of mine who said, "How dare you take Ryan Young? Couldn't you take him someplace nicer? The varsity is trash." I disagree with them, by the way. The peach pie is outrageous at the varsity. The chili dogs, there isn't a softer bun on a chili dog on the planet than at the varsity. And Ryan enjoyed it. Ryan said it was good food. But in any event, Ryan and I, this is all going to make sense in a second. Quick diversion. I apologize. So Ryan and I are sitting at the varsity. There are a couple of Duke fans there who took pictures with him and stuff. No one took pictures with me. Oh, well. So Ryan and I are sitting there chatting about the team a little bit. And he goes, "I love the defense, but the offense is a little bit janky at times." I'm like, "Janky." Yeah. I love that. He's right. He's absolutely right.
Great word.
Yeah.
I use it a lot.
So I said to him, I go, "Dude, here's the thing." I said, "Right now in the season, Duke's hitting about 35%. I said, I feel like I look at these guys, I look at their form, I look at the quality of the three-pointers they're taking. I feel like rather than hitting 35% on threes, this is a team that over the course of by the time the year's done, they're going to be up 37, 38% or so," which, I talked on the pod we had a couple days ago about Duke's shooting, about the fact that, historically 37, 38 is that's sort of the top range for a Duke team. And that we, at least going back to the 90s, we haven't had a Duke team ever hit 40% over the course of a season. So I said to Ryan, I'm like, I feel like this team's going to get to 37, 38% by the time the year is done. And to do that, that means they're going to have a bunch of games coming up where they're going to hit better than 40%. And lo and behold, right away, immediately after it happened, they hit 40%. So it's all because I was eating a chili dog and chatting with Ryan Young. That's why we shot well from three.
Look, you take your friends to the institutions of your city. You don't take them to the nice cushy restaurants, because then you can't talk about basketball the way you can at the varsity. So the varsity speaks to the existence of college sports. So look, I think when you talk about the shooting, and everyone, for an individual player, it's always been what, 50, 40, 90, 50% from the floor, 40% from three, 90% from free throw. You were doing excellent. As a team, you're hoping 50, 40, 80, right? Like, as we mentioned, free throws, like as a team, if you're at 80, you are doing really, really well. And I think, look, save for a couple of missed free throws, right? We were 66% from the line, 10 for 15. We were 56% from the floor, 40% from three. Like, we're doing exactly what we're supposed to do. We're shooting very, very well. And I think the one thing about the shooting is, as we've mentioned, for some of these guys, it just takes a couple of shots for them to get back on track. Hopefully this is the start of Kon getting back on track, shooting over 40%, because again, if he can hit threes, and Isaiah Evans is hitting threes and Tyrese Proctor is hitting threes, it doesn't matter what other teams do, because then you have like, oh, by the way, Cooper Flagg is down low getting 13 points on his birthday. Oh, by the way, Man is dunking his way to 15 points. And had one great block on Ryan Mutombo, where I was looking for the finger wag, but I know he probably respects his dad, so he wasn't going to do it. Yeah. But man, it was a vicious block. And I speaking of Man, right? 8 rebounds, 6 of them offensive.
Yeah.
I just want to put that out there. That man was a beast on the boards. And Jason, he did the one thing that I've been asking him to do: jump up to try and block a shot. Maybe not get the block, but then jump back up and get the rebound. He had a couple of possessions where he jumped for the block. Someone tried to sky it over him. It bounced off the rim, and he just basically hit the ground and planted, did his second jump, went back up and grabbed the rebound before anyone else had a chance to even think about going for it. I like the motivation from him to finish the play that he started with his defense.
Yeah, when he did that in the first half, Ndongo took a shot and he went up for it. He didn't jump that hard because I think he knew that he was too far away. If he touched it, it would have been goaltending. And then he quickly turned around and grabbed the rebound. And someone on press row said, "I think that's the first time I've seen Man try to block a shot and grab a rebound all year." So yes, you've been calling for it, and he was able to do it. Hey, I wanted to harken back to something you were mentioning a moment ago about guys seeing the ball go through the basket and having and having 3-pointers sort of become epidemic as a result of that. This wasn't sort of at the top of my notes on the good, and there are going to be things I'm going to say a little later on that are not necessarily that good about this guy, but Caleb Foster hit a 3-pointer in this game. It came shortly after he had a really difficult layup that he made, a short shot in the lane. There were Georgia Tech guys all around him. I was sure it was going to get packed. He like double pumped it or something. I don't even know how it went in. But that's a big moment for him. I'm worried about Caleb. I'm worried that he's starting to slip further and further down the rotation. I mean, Isaiah Evans, I think at this point is clearly ahead of him in the rotation. Isaiah came in well before Caleb did. It was him and Malik Brown were essentially the first guys off the bench, Isaiah Evans. And I'm concerned about, how Caleb's going to react to all of this. And I think the fact that he was able to get some better minutes in the second half, make that layup, make that 3-pointer, that just helps a lot. And as long as I'm mentioning Isaiah Evans really quickly, I just want to point out that it's sort of interesting in this game. He had a pair of threes, but Isaiah wasn't taking them in bunches the way he sometimes does. It was more in the flow rather than the Isaiah microwave kind of situation, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I just wanted to mention, by the way, his release, there's no one on this Duke team that has a release as quick as Isaiah Evans. I've seen it on TV, seeing it in real life. I was just like, that the ball just comes out of his hands so damn fast. And then the other thing I wanted to note about Isaiah and sort of the way Duke's rotation is evolving is when Isaiah came in the game along with Malik Brown, Sion James went out. And if Sion and Caleb Foster are both not in the game, you sort of get to who's playing point guard? And it'd be easy to say that it's Tyrese Proctor playing point guard. But that's not really the case. I think it looked to me like they were keeping Tyrese off the ball more, still on the wing, which is where he has operated almost exclusively this whole season. And that functionally Cooper Flagg and Kon Khaman were playing the point guard for Duke. Now, Duke was mostly taking Georgia Tech misses and just racing up court. So it was like whoever got the ball, go. So there wasn't, it wasn't necessarily like we need a point guard kind of situation. But I did think it was interesting and worth noting that when Isaiah came in the game and Sion went out, that rather than you thinking Proctor moves over there, it was more Kon and Cooper, at least from what I could tell.
Jason, I want to shift gears because I know we've talked a lot about the offense and with good reason for this game. I do want to note our defense, and I want to start it with a tweet that came from Zion O on Twitter. And he was taking into account how the Duke defense kind of goes on its own type of run. And so he goes, "Woof, when Duke's defense locks in, it's a beautiful sight. With Duke teams, it's usually them going on offensive runs. This team goes on defensive runs, just stretches of opponents crumbling against their defense." And I think while the offense helped put the game away, it was the fact that in that second half, especially that just to start the game a little bit, but to start the second half especially, the defense suffocates them to the point where, again, it was very sloppy for Georgia Tech. They were taking bad shots. They were making bad decisions. They weren't necessarily, it wasn't like we were taking the ball away from them, but they were just, hey, I'm going to pass to the guy that has 3 guys on him instead of the guy that's open. That guy with 3 guys on him catches the ball and goes, panic, shoots the ball. We get the rebound. We're going the other way. There's a point, Jason, where I feel like you mentioned the 17-2 run. It felt like for the first 8 minutes of the ball game, of the second half, Georgia Tech didn't take one shot that you could consider good.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about games. I'm
Yeah.
not talking about shots that went in, right? Because they had a couple of really tough shots that went in. I'm just talking about shots that you're just like, that was a good shot. That was a good possession. They got a good look at the basket. We are able to take that away from teams. And it turns out it is throughout the whole game. Georgia Tech shoots 36% from the floor. In the second half, they only shoot 25% from the floor. And again, most of that was that first 8 to 10 minutes of the second half where it just felt like, again, no matter what they were going to do, we were going to have a body on them. We were going to have a hand in their face. We were going to be right in their grill. And they were not able to get off a shot where they could move the ball around the perimeter and say, oh, this guy's wide open. Why don't he take it? There was never any of that. It was always contested. And like I said, we do very well when we contest other team shots. It's just the success rate has been super high this year. They were able to come out of the locker room and really hone in on that part of the game. Now the offense was working. Let's hone in on our defense and make it where it's an absolutely just disastrous afternoon for Georgia Tech. And that's how this game turned into at some point. It was like a 20-point blowout very, very quickly because, yes, our offense was working, but our defense made it where Georgia Tech never saw the light of day.
Yeah, I had in my notes, stop me if you've heard this before, Tech struggled to get good shots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the thing I noticed was they were frequently shooting or being forced to shoot with the shot clock almost run down. I think they had at least 1 or 2 shot clock violations in this game. Duke held Tech to 56 points in this contest. By doing that, Duke once again has assumed the ranking of the #1 defensive team in all of college basketball, according to Ken Pomeroy's metrics. By the way, we're now back up to #2 in Pomeroy. We're second only to Auburn. We moved back ahead of Tennessee as a result of this 26-point win over Georgia Tech. And Tech, like you said, only scored 20 points in the second half, and they just looked beat most of the second half. They looked like a team that had lost
Emotionally, they look beat,
Yeah,
right? Like when you think about that, you're just like, oh, this team came out of that first timeout after they were after it was like I think it was like an 11-2 run. They're like, all right, we gotta stem the tide. They come out of that timeout, we rattle off like 6 more points, and they were just like, okay, game's over, done.
Yeah, they just never had a run in them. And the 56 points they scored was their worst scoring output of the year. And Tech's played some good teams, some good defensive teams. No one's held them to less than 56 points. And amazing stat, Duke has now held 5 of the 12 teams they've played to their lowest scoring output of the year. That's absurd. It is such a testament to the way Duke makes offense difficult for opposing teams. And Tom, we said at the beginning of the season, defense travels. Defense is always there. Duke will struggle at times. We had a 3.5-minute stretch in this game where we didn't score a bucket in the first half, like right after the 10-minute mark or so. Very frustrating. We've seen games where Duke has just struggled on offense. I'm not going to say it doesn't matter because it does. You have to score to win. But the way this team plays defense, it makes the occasional offensive struggle matter a lot less than it does for other teams.
Last year, the metric there, I guess the stat that Duke men's basketball was using quite a bit was the fact that we were holding teams under their season average. And we had this thing where I think it was like we were, 25 or 26-1 or something like that when we held another team under their scoring average for the year. And I this year, the fact that we're like, oh, it's their lowest output of the season, not like under their season average. Oh, they average 80 points. We gave up 84. No. They average 84 points. We're giving up 56. We're giving up 47. Like how many teams have we kept under 60 points this year? And that's going. And when we talk about the NCAA tournament, that magic number in a lot of those games is 60. And the fact that we're holding so many teams under 60 points really gives you, right now, that gives me the biggest optimism for March is that if we're able to continue to do that, then it's super hard for any team to beat you in the NCAA tournament and beyond. So I'm really looking forward to that. Jason, anything else in the good before we keep going?
I have one tiny little thing. At one point in the first half, Duke rolled out there with a lineup of Caleb Foster, Sion James, Isaiah Evans, Mason Gillis, and Man, which meant that none of Tyrese Proctor, Cooper Flagg, or Kon Khaman were in the game. Those are our three best offensive players. No offense to Isaiah Evans, who is amazing at times, but Isaiah Evans mostly gets his threes off of a pass from one of those three guys. So those are our three best offensive players. And I looked out there and I was like, this team's going to struggle to score a little bit. This is a lot of guys who play off of other players and stuff. And I was like, this team's going to struggle to score a little bit. And I was wrong about that. That was right. That was the moment where Man had that like turnaround jumper in the lane, which, by the way, I didn't know he had that in his bag. I really did not. I'm not sure he knew he had that in his bag. And then like a moment later, Sion had a really nice like drive in the lane, take it hard to the goal, finish layup. I was so impressed that Jon Scheyer, versatility of this team, that he was able to roll that lineup out there and have them score a couple buckets. They only played together for like maybe 3 or 4 possessions. Pretty soon, I think it was either Cooper or Tyrese was back in the game. Kon was back, not like those guys are going to sit on the bench very much. But I thought it was a nice, preparation moment for those guys that they were able to. I'm sure they looked around. They were sort of like, wait, we're all playing together? Because that's not a lineup you see very often for Duke.
But that's great because you want to test these out now so that in March, if we have to go there, then we can. And these guys feel confident playing with each other. And also for us, it's not a drop off in talent level. It's not a drop off in production on offense or defense when our three guys aren't in the game. Yeah, you're going to see maybe some slight drop off when your 3 best offensive players are not in the game. But at least on defense, as this team has been doing, defense has been carrying and setting up and being the catalyst for the offense. So if we have guys that can continue to provide that intensity and that effort, that is going to help, especially if we get foul trouble or anything else, right? That could happen. Someone's, shooting is off, whatever that may be. You need to have different combinations ready. And I'm sure Jon Scheyer looks to that and goes, hey, that's a win for us. In the sense that if we need to go to this again, we can utilize that and be totally confident that they're going to be able to produce. Let's leave it here on the good stuff. On the other side of this break that we're about to take right now, we're going to talk to Kon and Khaman. We're going to hear from Jon Scheyer, and then we'll get into some of the stuff we need to improve on as we continue forward in the season. So stick with us.
Run a restaurant and you learn pretty quick. The sound of a crisp fry starts way before the first bite. As delivery and to-go keeps business booming,
Order for pickup.
McCain SureCrisp fries keep orders crispy.
Hey, delivery.
After the trip, the crispiness comes through. McCain SureCrisp fries. Go the distance. See how far our fries can take your business at surecrisp.com/delivery.
What's up, y'all? It's Joe Budden, here to talk about Prize Picks. Football season is heating up, and Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action while watching football. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. The app is really simple to use. Pick 2 or more players across any sport, pick more or less on their projection, and you could win real cash on your lineup. Prize Picks even invented the flex play, so you can still cash out if one of your picks doesn't hit. On Prize Picks, you can mix and match players from different sports. Real money sports action while watching football.
Download the Prize Picks daily fantasy app today and use code FIELD and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code FIELD on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
This episode is brought to you by NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. Catch every moment of your team's playoff push with NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. You'll get amazing features like multi-view, and right now it's only $49 for the rest of the NFL regular season. So give yourself the ultimate gift this holiday season. Get NFL Sunday Ticket for $49. Sign up now at youtube.com/Sunday Ticket. Device and content restrictions apply. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games.
It can get lonely climbing Mount McKinley, so to entertain myself, I go to ChumbaCasino.com. At Chumba Casino, I can play hundreds of online casino-style games for free, like online slots, bingo, Slingo, and more. Plus, I get a daily login bonus. It's just too bad that up here, I don't have anyone to share my excitement with. Woohoo!
Live the Chumba life. Anytime, anywhere.
Play for free now at ChumbaCasino.com. VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Jason, we are back. And before we get to the stuff we need to improve in this game, we also have play of the game and player of the week. I know you were at the game. You were on press row. You were in the press conference with Coach Scheyer and Kon and Khaman after the game, and I know you have some audio for us. So tell the people what we're about to hear from both of those guys on this big win.
Yeah, the post-game newser you will hear in just a moment. By the way, I was not able to go into the locker room. The Duke players, after this game ended, as soon as they were done showering, they started scattering to the wind. They're not. There's not a flight back to Durham for these guys. It is their Christmas break. Mm-hmm. They're all going to different places. I ran into my buddy Sion. He had his whole family outside waiting for him, and he said he's really looking forward to having a little bit of time with them. All these guys go different locations. I believe my understanding is that they're coming back on the 26th, the day after Christmas. But
that's what Kon said after the game. Yeah, they had five or 6 days.
Yeah, they're getting like 5 or 6 days to spend with their families. I know that's a nice break for them. For a lot of these guys, they probably have not been with their families since last summer. Yeah. They, like the moment they start, they've been in Duke a lot. So it's nice to get that little bit of a break. So they didn't have reporters come in the locker room so the guys could get going. But we did get Coach Scheyer, and he brought Kon and Khaman with him to the post-game press conference. There only when those two guys were talking, there were only 3 reporters who asked questions. It was me, Steve Wiseman, and Connor O'Neill. We sort of took like Steve went first, then me, then Connor, then Connor went again. Then Steve, so the 3 of us each got to ask a couple questions. The Georgia Tech reporters, I don't know, seemed a little bit comatose, or like they'd had enough of this poor Tech team. They asked some questions when the Tech coaches and the Tech players came out, but they didn't interject at all when the Duke reporters were out there. And the other Duke reporters were content to let me and Connor and Steve ask all the questions. So anyway, here is the press conference. You're going to hear a little bit of Coach Scheyer's opening statement, and then Steve Wiseman asks a question, I ask a question, and then we go back and forth, all of us. But you're going to hear a lot of conversation about the combination of Kon and Khaman.
All right. Well, first of all, proud of our team today, especially our response in the second half. Georgia Tech thought they played just a really good game in the first half, and especially they were hurting us in the paint. Look, they're clearly not healthy, and that's hurt them with just the rotations and continuity. So we understand we played, a team that wasn't at full strength, but still you have to show up, and anything can happen. And I thought for us in the second half, we found a great thing. Not that it was new, but just Kon, the decisions he made, and I think he's it's such a great lesson. I think for any freshman, any young player. He's played well. He just hasn't hit shots he normally does. And I think it's drove him nuts a little bit. But he's worked his butt off. He makes others better. He's tough. He rebounds. And at some point, the shooting's just going to come with it. So I thought he played a great overall game, not just the shooting. And collectively, I thought a lot of different guys stepped up. And it was a great effort. So proud of our team. 20 assists, second highest we've had all year. I think our offense is coming along. And we'll take a few days to be with our families and celebrate the holidays and get back to it.
Any questions? Thanks. I'll start with Kon.
Glad you have the mic. I don't know if I could have heard you, Steve.
Kon, how have you worked through this shooting? I guess we'll call it a slump, no lack of a better word. Have you been through something like this before? And how do you think you got back out on the other side today?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was definitely probably the worst slump of my life. So it was a rough couple of games, but try to find ways to affect the game in other ways, and I just felt like I was making a couple of shots here and there, but worry about them. You know, I thought last game I was worrying about it a little too much, but you just gotta have the next play mentality and be tough that way. So I try to do that and have a bunch of fun today.
John and Kon, the second half was dominated by the pick and roll that you ran with man-man. John, is that something that you guys have been working on more and more, or is it just, I know you don't like to call plays, but were these guys just doing it naturally, and once it worked, Tech wasn't going to stop it looked like?
Well, one, I don't not like to call plays. I do like to call plays. I think for us, though, especially in transition, it's important that these guys flow and follow their instincts, but we have to be a team that executes. And strategy and calling plays and all that is a huge part of what we do. And, you know, a lot of it for us, it's matchups. It's what we feel can work based on scouting and all that. But, you know, sometimes you fall into something. And we thought in this game with Khaman, he's such a weapon in pick and roll. I don't know that we've exposed that at the level that we can, even whether it's for him, for the ball handler, and Kon in this case, or for shooters surrounding him. And Kon just made some great reads to start the half, and then don't mess with the good thing. Let's keep it going.
You called it the worst shooting slump of your life. What work have you put in? If you've done anything differently over the last couple of weeks, or just kind of stayed the course and stayed confident that eventually they'd fall?
Yeah, I mean, it just similar work every day before and after practice. Similar stuff. Try to be a little more intentional with holding follow through. Talked to somebody this week, and they helped me with just saying the guy's name that gets you locked in and ready to go to shoot the ball. But I mean, little tweaks here and there, but I think it's more about the mind than anything else.
Back up front here. John, this was the team's best shooting day of the season so far. What I know it's always good when the ball goes in the
Sure.
right? But what did you like about the structure of the offense today? What works?
I just thought the shot quality was a lot better, you know, and it's probably the best that we've flowed, you know, just going from defense to offense. I thought we did a really good job. We're finding each other's strengths and understanding just how to play together, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time, and then we've done a much better job. Thought we really executed today in the half court. You know, we got what we wanted. The ball, again, it was simple in the second half because we just kept going, you know, middle pick and roll with these two guys. But we have really good shooting to get him off some staggers and screens. Isaiah, just to get some more movement, I think was a big thing for us, and understanding what we're doing at a higher level.
John, you guys were here about 33 days ago in the same city. How much have you seen this team evolve and grow from the Kentucky game to now?
You know, I'll take you back even a year ago, you know, and just it's what a difference a year can make, but also just this has everything to do with the decisions you make and how you grow as a team and the off-season work that you do. And for our group, then we thought about, we were just in the same hotel like you mentioned a month ago, and so it brings back some of those feelings. But at the end of the day, I think we're a completely different team than that time. I didn't know it was 33 days. I trust you on that, but
it was quick math.
but I think we've grown so much. You know, just the togetherness, the toughness, and specifically the thing that's grown the most is our defense. You know, I look back on that game, our defense wasn't close, you know, to where it is now, and that's going to be what drives us the whole year. And this team has embraced it. Kon knows it, and again, we'll see 33 days from now, and we have to continue to grow.
Bad math is 39 days. 39.
All right, I shouldn't have trusted you then on that.
Kon, in this game, it felt like the ball was in your hands to start the plays a bit more than maybe some other games, other than, like, I remember a lot of that against Kansas. Do you prefer being on the ball or off the ball a little bit? I mean, I know you run around screens and such on the perimeter as well. Which is more better for you to facilitate the game?
I don't really have a preference, but I do find it really fun playing the pick and roll. It's something I really worked on this summer, and I've gotten a lot better at, and just I enjoy making those reads. But I wouldn't say I have too much of a preference.
So, Jason, first off, thanks for getting that audio from the press conference, and I think also again it just kind of ties into the fact that these guys are starting to really know each other and where they are on the floor, and even that adaptability, right? I don't know that we get this pick and roll from Kon and Man if Kon has been shooting threes lights out all season, right?
Yeah.
Because he's probably just planted out there on the three-point line, but now he's had to adapt his game, go inside a bit, and now that the outside game is working, we have this additional element where he's able to do that and work with a high-low situation or pick and roll situation where both guys can eat. Both of them did very well. Both of them had double-digit points. Both of them had a lot of rebounds, and the amount of just back and forth between them. And that also helps that Man's such a great passer. He's not going to get 18 assists in the game or 10 assists in the game, but he's able with his height to find open guys either inside or outside. And the fact that I thought he did well in that, considering the fact that he was going up against a 7'2" guy in Ryan Mutombo, right? It's easier to do that when someone's shorter than you. It's even more difficult when somebody is your size.
Yeah, and by the way, to play off what you were saying about Kon having to develop more parts of his game, at one point, John Scheyer said, I know Kon's been really frustrated, and you can't hear it, but I could see it. Kon was like nodding. He was like, yeah, I've been frustrated, but he's had to develop other things. And like I noticed this week, he's 6 of 6 on 2-point shots for the week. Even though he struggled a little bit against George Mason from outside, found a way to score, found a way to impact things by going into the lane. And he's gotten really, really good at that. And he's also found himself as a playmaker. We saw this against Kansas where he had 9 assists. This game he has 5 assists. He's turned into a playmaker. You're right. If he was raining down 43% from 3, then yeah, he might just be standing on that wing and waiting to get another 3-pointer. But because it hasn't been working, he's had to develop something else. And that something else now makes him into a way more complete player for the Duke Blue Devils.
Well-rounded. That's what we love at Duke University. We love it in our academics, and we also love it in our athletes. And Kon starting to develop that well-roundedness of his game. Jason, we've talked a lot about the good. Obviously, this wasn't a perfect game. Let's get to some of the things that they need to improve. The one thing that I really have is towards the end of the first half, and I know you were there, so you can give a more poignant description of it. It just felt like it was sloppy on both ends of the floor. We had a few sloppy possessions, and at that point, I think we had like a 15 to 17 point lead, and it was reduced all the way to 6 very quickly. And it was really just, we had some turnovers on offense, and on defense, we just weren't really communicating. I think, John Scheyer had it with about 55 seconds left in the first half. He called the timeout after they cut it to 6, and really
he was
laid
frustrated.
into him.
He was visibly frustrated.
Visibly frustrated. We didn't get the whole thing during the timeout, but we could fill in the blanks. But again, that sort of thing where they did close out okay for that last 55 seconds. But yeah, it was about a 2 to 3 minute stretch where I felt like we just weren't locked in and focused on both offense and defense.
Yeah, it was a little more than 3 minutes, I think. I was trying to look at the play-by-play and time it and the such. Duke went up by 15. 37-22 with about 4.5 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there to like the final 30 or 40 seconds, Tech outscored Duke 12-2. And it felt to me like Tech was getting in the lane much too easily. And when you get in the lane, you get better shots. They were able to score inside in a way that had John Scheyer very frustrated with the Duke defense. And then on offense, we weren't getting the good shots. I wonder if maybe Duke got a little bit overconfident with how easily things were coming earlier in the half for them. Duke also got a little bit lucky in the first half. The way the press box is situated, you're like right over, if you think about where the Duke bench was, we're like right over that basket. That's where the press row is. So I had a really great angle on anything going toward that basket. And that was the basket Georgia Tech was shooting at in the first half. And they must have had, I'm going to say at least 4 or 5, maybe 6 shots, like rattle around the rim and then come out.
Mm-hmm.
Guys taking close-in shots that sort of rolled off the rim. I think that Tech probably, through the first 10, 12 minutes of that first half, probably could have easily had another, I'm going to say 6, 8 points at least, easily. And it wasn't that Duke was playing such great defense that Tech, Tech should have made those shots. They were shots that in and out. And so I think maybe that got Duke to be a little more confident than they should have been, and they lost some of their focus. But and by the way, speaking of the defensive focus and such, like Tech only had 3 turnovers in the first half. They held on to the ball really, really well. Duke needs to find a way to, I know we force teams to miss shots. Need to also force them to turn the ball over a little bit. In the second half, it got better. Tech had 7 turnovers in the second half. But I thought that was the defensive intensity to me, especially in the back half of the first half, wasn't where it needed to be.
I think on the turnover thing, I obviously was sitting a little bit further back than you were at this game. I was sitting in a hotel room in Little Rock, Arkansas, watching on an iPad. But I think from my vantage chair, it didn't feel like the lack of turnovers in the first half was account of anything that we were doing. I thought it was full credit to Georgia Tech doing what they don't do, which is take care of the basketball. I thought it seemed like they had a renewed point of emphasis on taking care of the basketball, and they did so. But again, our defense is just so suffocating that eventually we're going to make you do something stupid with the basketball, whether that's make a bad shot or make a bad decision. And we were able to do that as the game moved on. So I wasn't too concerned about that part. But yeah, the lack of focus is what it is. And we're not, it feels like it's something simple to ask them to be focused for all 40 minutes of the game, guys, and additional 5 we have to go to OT. But it's very hard to do. And there's going to be some lapses. But how do you do it? You have to figure out a way to recalibrate and refocus before things get too out of hand. And I think just in that first half, that 3 to 4 minute stretch that we've talked about, it got to the point where it was almost about to get out of hand, and it was going to be. My worry was that in a better game against a better team, that 15-point lead disappears by halftime, and it's a new game as you enter the second half, as opposed to you carrying a slim lead and then you're able to open it up. It's a world of difference as far as the psyche, as far as the momentum for that to happen. So locking that up at the end of halves and playing the way we did at the beginning of the second half, that's the key to success here. They say the middle ground, the middle 10 minutes or whatever, the first 5 minutes, the last 5 minutes, that's where you really need to lock in and excel and make it where if the team is going to beat you, it's not going to be because you weren't focused. So I think that's the idea.
Yeah, and we were talking about turnovers a moment ago. I do want to switch over to the Duke turnovers. In the first half, Duke had 6 turnovers, and I thought especially Cooper Flagg seemed a little sloppy. Had a couple turnovers that I didn't like. We haven't talked about Cooper that much in this game. We've been so focused on Kon and the game he had. This was, it was his birthday. I think Cooper had like a B- kind of game for him. He was, he impacted everything the way he always does. And, I'm sitting here saying he had a B- kind of game, and his stats are still really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
He still finishes with 13 points and 4 rebounds, couple assists. But this wasn't like the best we've seen from Cooper, not even close to it. And then the other, I want to mention another Duke player. I talked about how happy I was to see Caleb Foster have a decent little run there in the second half. In the first half, second game in a row where Caleb steps out of bounds on the sidelines,
Yeah.
Man, come on. When that happened, I was like, God, this guy's in one of the deepest funks I've seen for a good Duke player in a long, long time. Like I was feeling like, got to go back to the Jack White funk. And Joey Baker is another guy who had one just where you were like, God, this guy just can't do anything right for himself. I noticed that, Kon and Isaiah Evans and even Sion had hit 3-pointers, and Caleb shorted one in the first half. And then Mason Gillis shorted one right after that. And I was like, okay, the 3-point mojo's gone. And like Duke didn't hit a 3-pointer for several minutes after that. I feel a little bit like it's possible. Caleb only played 13 minutes in this game, and several of them were late. I don't want to say it was garbage time, but it was kind of garbage time. Mason only played, what was the number? Mason only plays a total of 8 minutes in this game. So, and Mason played only 5 against Auburn, only 7 against Arizona. I like I say, I worry a little bit that Mason and Caleb are slipping a little bit further down out of that rotation. That said, I do want to mention one thing about Mason Gillis, which is that I know, and this was very noticeable if you're at the game. Out of every timeout, he was the last guy on the Duke team to come back to the bench. He was out there talking to those guys. They're about to go back onto the floor, giving them that one last little nugget of information or whatever else it may be. And I also noticed the second there was a timeout, TV timeout, Duke calling timeout, Georgia Tech calling, whatever it was, he was the first guy up greeting the guys who had been on the floor. He's a consummate teammate. And I guarantee you, if you go, hey, Mason, you only played 8-9 minutes in this game, he's going to be like, I don't care. We won by 25. 26, whatever the final score was. It doesn't even matter to him one tiny bit how much he's playing. What a great, cares about one thing, Mason Gillis, whether or not the team wins. But if we're talking good and bad, I'm just a little worried Duke's vaunted depth is becoming a little less vaunted because I feel like there are a couple guys who are slipping down a little bit.
And it's also due to, as we mentioned in the emergence of Isaiah Evans, right? Like if Isaiah Evans is not getting his shots off and doing it the clip that he has, he's not playing as much, and it's probably even shrunk even further. Maybe Mason or Caleb are getting more minutes as a result of that. But I just hope in the case of Caleb, it is a demonstrative exit from a slump the way that Jack White had in 2020.
There you go, baby.
I hope it's one of those where he just has a game where we just like basically have to record it like, the under 8 mark going, yo, have we witnessed this? Did you see this right now that's happening? Hopefully one day that happens. We would love to do that. But let's leave the game here, or before we close out, let's close out with our play of the game. Jason, you were there. Which play was your favorite? Because there was a lot to choose from.
Yeah, I will first of all say that it is harder to pick a play of the game when you're at the game versus on TV. You don't get the same kind of replays and stuff. Things don't develop in front of you the way they do on television. Your angle sometimes isn't as great. I had to take one of the Kon to Khaman pick and rolls, though. I mean, how could you not? The one I'm taking is not the one you might think. It's the one where, it was like the 5th time Duke tried it, and they ended up, Georgia Tech defended it by fouling man-man. Like they were the only way they could stop it. Put him on the line. At least he won't be dunking on us. So they foul him. He hits the first free throw and he misses the second free throw. And in succession, Sion James and man-man both got offensive rebounds. And they were offensive rebounds where it was just like, we want it more than you do. Period, end of story. This is a ball that you could easily get, but you're not going to get because I want it more than you do. And after the second one, after Sion got one, Cooper missed a shot, and then Man got the rebound, and Thunder dunked on Georgia Tech again. And it turned into, them trying to stop the pick and roll, turned into a 3-point play for Duke. And I just loved seeing the fight, the offensive rebounds, the we want it more than you do that I saw on that play. So that was my play of the game.
So that was, all the pick and rolls were great. And the only reason I'm not picking them is because I feel like at that moment I was just like in this, this is great. We're doing so well. This is a very happy game. And I'm not necessarily lined up on like, that was a play that stood out amongst all the others because they were all so great in the second half. What did stand out to me, I'm giving it to the birthday boy here. Off of a Tyrese Proctor steal, he had a transition pass to Flag, and somebody decided to go up and try and blow out his candles with him.
Oh, that was a big mistake.
Big mistake. Big mistake. Don't ever do that, especially on the kid's birthday. But he went up and literally, I think within 35 seconds of me seeing that on my iPad, Duke men's basketball had it on Twitter as a poster. So you could go see that poster. That is my play of the game of Cooper absolutely just dunking the life out of somebody because they decided that they wanted a cupcake too. It was not his birthday party. It was Cooper's. And Cooper was determined to make sure that it was his.
I can't believe that neither one of us took that Tyrese Proctor shot that his back was to the basket. That layup, that was craziness. And it wasn't like right underneath the basket. Like he was a good 5-7 feet out. It was just...
He basically coasted past the basket. It was like, okay, the ball's still in my hand. Let me go this way. Jason, we end this particular show with player of the week. We have the George Mason game and the Georgia Tech game to consider. Who is your player of the week?
Well, this is a guy who did not have a big game against George Mason. He was fine, but didn't have a big game against George Mason. But I'm sorry. What Kon Khaman did in this game, breaking out from 3, turning that pick and roll into an unstoppable weapon. I have to go with Kon as my player of the week. Part of it is I'm a little sick of always picking Cooper. Like if you look at the pure stats from the week, it's Cooper Flag. I think it's going to be Cooper Flag every week of the season if you just look at the pure stats. But I just think Kon, the finisher in the lane, like I said, he was 6 of 6 on 2-pointers this week. Kon, the 3-point threat, and Kon, the guy who runs the pick and roll like nobody. Those three players combined into one, that's my player of the week for sure. That player makes Duke special.
Great choice. I'm going to go with this. I think a couple pods ago, I said, and I've said this before in the show, I want Duke fans to never, ever, 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 ever become tired of going to a college bowl game. I want Duke fans to never, ever, 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 ever get tired of watching Cooper Flag do Cooper Flag things. I'm going with Cooper Flag.
No complaint.
37 points, 13 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, 1 block, and 1 birthday on the week. He is now 18, but as I mentioned at the top, he's been playing like an adult the entire time. And I think all this goes, you mentioned the game that Kon had against Georgia Tech. The game that Cooper had against George Mason is what really blew the doors off of that game as well. So again, 2 great picks. I think you couldn't go wrong with either player.
Yeah, Donald, before we go, there's one other thing I want to mention. The phenomenal run of Jason Evans making a prediction, and being so dead wrong continues today. We just released a podcast basically 24 hours ago about the demise of North Carolina basketball, with me saying, oh, this team is in terrible trouble over the next several years, blah, 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 blah. If you haven't listened to it, make sure you listen to that podcast. I'm telling you, the points that I made in that podcast are still valid. And yet I am sitting here telling you that in a game that they absolutely had to have today, because they don't have many opportunities for good wins left, North Carolina found themselves down 16 points with 13 minutes left against UCLA. Quality win, quad 1 win, sitting there for Carolina. And they're down 16 with 13 minutes left. And like they have done a lot this season, the Tar Heels stormed back in the final minutes. But like they have not done at all this season, this time they actually managed to hang on and win. They won the game 75-74. RJ Davis hit a free throw in the final 10 seconds or so to seal the victory for them. I couldn't watch it. I don't know exactly what happened. It looks to me like Carolina didn't have a lead in the second half until like 13 seconds left.
You only need him at triple zeros. That's all that really counts. I will say this.
Congrats to them. They really, really, really needed that win.
Man, I hated being right on that one. That's what I'll never want to be right about.
Damn you.
I hate it. I will say we will, as we discuss this, we will talk probably football on the next episode. The only reason we can't do it now is because there's still about 13 minutes left in Clemson season. They are getting blasted right now by Texas. SMU lost to Penn State. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, by the way, the final score doesn't indicate how competitive SMU was in that game, but
it was a lot of mistakes. And funny enough, Jason, if you watch the Duke SMU game, you just watched the playoff game that happened earlier.
Exactly.
Today.
Yeah.
Same thing.
But the difference was Penn State capitalized in a way that Duke did not.
Correct.
Yeah.
We lose by 1. Penn State wins by a lot more than that. We'll talk about the college football playoff on the next episode of DBR. But for now, this will end episode number 675. Again, thank you to everybody who sent in your headlines. You can continue to send in headlines if you want to. DBR Podcast at gmail.com. We are going to be off for a few days. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy Hanukkah to all of you. Happy Kwanzaa, which starts on the 26th. We don't have a game until the 31st, Jason. So we're going to take a nice little nap. Let's let Santa and everybody deliver gifts. Let's enjoy family. And we'll be back very, very soon to preview the rest of the season because there's a lot of basketball left to play. So for Jason Evans down in Atlanta, I am Donald Wine sitting in my hotel room in Little Rock, Arkansas. And now it's time for the Duke Band to play us out and take us home.
I'm trying to pay attention. We'll do it in the back half of the episode. Carolina and UCLA. UCLA's up 3 with about 3 minutes left. They were up 16. And if Carolina loses this game, I mean, they pretty much have to beat Duke at least once. Or they have to, I mean, like, their scenarios for making the tournament start to get somewhat dim if they lose this game.
Sounds like a them problem.
It does. It is definitely a them problem.